Okay. Good evening, friends, and welcome to the presentation number 2 of Covenant series. Today, I'm planning to present Abrahamic Covenant. These are pretty interesting subjects, and let me give an introduction here. On the left-hand side, you see the picture of a beautiful young woman, the bride, came to her would-be husband, a young man. Both of them are signing the contract and they are going through the document that they agree for the marriage. And when they affirm their agreement through the signature, and the marriage comes to an existence. In the early years, probably 15 years ago, when I began to study the subject covenants, my perspective was very narrow. I used to focus on what is written in the document and who were the signatories of this document. That's all I focused on and went through about my studies. But after a few years, I realized it is much more than just a contract. It is much more than what is written in the document and who are the signatories. In fact, God, when He looks back at the covenants that He made, especially the Sinai covenant, He recaps the whole Sinai covenant in a very strange and very interesting way that changed my perspective once for all on the covenant. He picks up the covenant and calls it a story, the whole story behind this event that is taking place, which we call it as a wedding. The wedding event is the climax, but something happened before this event. In fact, this event to happen, it has a history. There's a story behind that. God includes the whole history and story also in the covenant when He recaps the Sinai covenant. So that changed my perspective. And then I started studying covenants with this broader perspective. So I want to share this broader perspective. So the story and the journey must have begun at least a couple of years ago. And they might have made promise to each other. She might have promised, yes, I would consider you, but still I need time to know you. And the boys, as they would be more proactive and they might have already made a decision. I want to marry you. You are my sweetheart. You are the dream girl of my whole life. So they commit, but the girls typically would take more time and make them wait until they are sure this is the man. And she also makes a promise. So it all begins with a preliminary knowing of each other and preliminary narrowing down, even though in the initial stages, she might be dating several other boys, as this boy also might be dating several girls, but they narrow down to one person. This looks a potential husband for me. So she would reduce the datings or eliminate datings with other guys, and she focuses more of knowing this one particular person, paving the way for this decision. And perhaps he also does the same thing. And they promise each other to work together if they can come to this point of where they can participate in the wedding ceremony. So it begins with promises. At that stage, just it would be promises, not a covenant yet. But the promises are important milestones towards the covenant signature or covenant event. So the promises are very important, and they might make more promises, multiple promises. Initially, they might be meeting once a month. Now they want to meet once a week, perhaps twice or thrice a week, and spend more time in different ways as they near and they come closer to that day of wedding. And that is the story. That is the story behind this event. And the story also extends beyond this covenant event. So, what happens after that? How the relationship begins? And if you want me to say what is the covenant in one sentence, I would say it is a committed relationship. It is committed. You are committed to that person and committed to that relationship, and from the both the parties, from man and his would-be wife. And this committed relationship is more secure relationship, and it is a continuing relationship and a consistent relationship, and it's a sharing relationship. The relationship itself grows and matures and blossoms. Before the children arrive, most couples would take time to get to know each other, and then they would decide later time to have children. And that's where the beautiful relationship grows and matures. And finally, the covenant has this qualitative enhancement and uplift of this relationship where they begin to say, I own you and I belong to you. That's what both the parties would say. You are mine, the girl might say, the wife would say, you are mine. You are not of another woman. You are mine exclusively. And he would also would say, it's not that they may not say outwardly, but the relationship quality would tell that he would say also, you are mine. There's an ownership, there's a maturation, there's a fruition, and a blossoming. All these stages, the relationship grows and grows, and that is the intended story when they sign this. So the signature, the covenant event where the covenant begins, has a definite history and the story, as well as definite the story after this signature. So that's how God looks at the totality of the relationship. Primarily, he has this relationship in mind. And another thing I want to present, before she makes promises to commit herself to him, or he would make promise to commit himself to her, even for a steady dating and a steady relationship, there is a testing and proving aspect of the faith. The faith. Is she faithful to me in small aspects and big aspects? Would she trust me? Would she stick on to me? As we are beginning a relationship, she would be challenged with other alternatives. Perhaps a richer guy, a taller guy, a handsome guy, or making more money than this person who with whom she's dating. But if she has commitment, does she have this faith that she can endure? And similarly, he also has to see her endurance, and she has to test his faithfulness in a smaller ways. Once they are assured that this marriage would work and the other partner would remain faithful, they will be more confident to come and sign this document, covenant. Very similar is the way God also works with the covenant. In the previous presentation, we talked about Noahic covenant, and God signs the covenant, declares unilaterally to Noah as well as his seed after him. And then also he includes all the creatures in whose nostrils is breath. So it's a pretty broad covenant. But before he enters into covenant, there is something significant happens. He finds favor with Noah, one man in this entire wicked world. He finds Noah faithful and he tests Noah. Noah goes through this test of faith. God tells him that I'm going to destroy in 120 years all of this mankind, and you have to build an ark because there is a flood that is going to come. There is no evidence for Noah that flood would come, and he has no precedence of history of flood, and nobody has seen flood before, and he has to bank on the word of God, and he has to build the ark according to the instructions of God, not according to what he thinks is right, but according to instructions of God. There's a test of faith, a test of obedience for Noah. And in spite of mockings, people are laughing at him. And he has to do this for 120 long years. And then he builds and finishes the ark, and all the animals would come into the ark, and he and his wife and his sons and daughters-in-law would come into the ark, and time to come to shut the gates of the ark. And until such time, there's a great test of faith. And once Noah passes the test, there's a trusting relationship with God, between God and Noah. And God takes great delight in the test that Noah passed. And no wonder, after the flood, he makes this a covenant, Noahic covenant, with Noah and his seed. So here, for every covenant, there is a test of faith. There's a great test of faith people would pass, or some person would pass, and he and his seed, God is so jubilant, so delighted to make a covenant. There's a verse that says it is impossible to please God without faith. Here is a man, Abraham today, who does similar test, passes with flying colors. He proves his faith in God by severe tests, and which no other man except Christ has gone through that kind of testing. And he passes that test with flying colors. And God is so pleased to make this covenant, Abrahamic covenant. Here, before God makes covenant with Abraham, he makes promises, several promises. We go through several chapters, not just Genesis 15, but we will go with 4 different chapters. We'll start discussion with Genesis 12, where he comes and visits Abraham and makes a bunch of promises. Just like man and his wife in this picture, before coming to this event, they begin their journey with few promises, and perhaps they make more promises. Sometimes they reiterate the same promises with more commitment. The same thing is God. He visits Abraham at different places and makes promises again and again until he comes to the point where he makes the covenant. And the covenant, when these two people in the picture, left-hand side, when they are signing the document, what they're doing is they're taking some kind of affirmation, affirm. They're affirming on their side. It's a language of oath or swearing. You swear and you take an oath that you will uphold this relationship. It began with demonstration of faith on both the parties that led to this growing and maturing of relationship. And now it has come to a big milestone, a big turning point the signing of the document of marriage, which we call wedding. And also, we should notice this is a wedding between two equals. Perhaps uh, normally you would select a, a girl from your own background, your own culture, your own nation, your own language, and more similar to you in your education or in your occupation, whatever, you find somebody more similar to you and more equal. And that's what we find, uh, more or less equal people would come to this marriage. And and we have well-defined traditional marriage model. Man would be provider and protector, and she would be helpmate, and she would raise children for him. And that's how the marriage progresses into children, perhaps grandchildren, and until death do their marriage last. That is the ideal. That is what they sign, hoping for. And that role not necessarily true in every case, especially for last 2 decades. The corporate America is going crazy with their agenda and strangest policies, and they're progressively getting rid of men from the workforce, and all the good paying jobs they give it for women. Women are the majority, mostly they are the ones who are hired and who are promoted. And we see a great change in the landscape of America, where first time in last 2 decades, mostly women are the bread earners, and they go out and win the bread and earn the bread and provide for the family. And the men, it is so hard for them to find jobs. They sit at home and they take care of what traditionally women would be doing. They will perhaps fix a meal, take care of children, and you have unprecedented changes that are happening in with the last 2 decades in US, and this is being exported to the whole world. But that is a story again. Our thing. But here, women and men are somewhat unequal in modern day America. But when we go to ancient stories of the marriage, think of Boaz and Ruth. Ruth was destitute and helpless, and Boaz was well established, and he's capable of protecting and providing Ruth, and he offers to marry her. That's a kind of picture that is presented to us when we come to covenants, because the covenants are between God and people. There are two great unequals, and God is protector, provider in the role of husband, and the woman is in the role of covenanted people. The woman is always Israel when we see the covenants, and she's Israel, and he is God. And God would protect and provide and blessings. And in case there is a unfaithfulness, he will punish with for the disobedience and unfaithfulness to the covenant. Nevertheless, it is between two great unequals. But the role of Israel, or the bride here, or wife here, to be obedient and faithful to all the terms and conditions of the covenant, to enjoy the protection and the provision and the blessings that flow from Almighty God. So here in our story, Abrahamic Covenant, God begins with promises and then makes the covenant. And then finally, we see he changes the names of the individuals. He changes the name of Abram to Abraham and Sarai to Sarah, and Isaac, their son, he also gives the name. What does it mean? If you take Hollywood, each of the movies, you have actors. If you take Sylvester Stallone, his name would not be Sylvester Stallone in a movie. he would be given another name for that movie. And if you go to second movie, it will be yet another name. So names carry a what is relevant to that character or role in that movie, in that story. So God would change the names of the people because he's building some great story through these verses that we are going to study today. So he changes the name. In Hollywood, they might select a name, some Tom, Dick, and Harry, probably not much meaningful to the story. But God has great relevance to the story. They are much meaningful, and their meanings have greater value and greater contribution to the story. So God creates this drama. He selects a person who is little faithful to him, picks up Abraham, and then he begins to work with him. And just like Noah has passed the test of faith, Abraham also had to pass the test of faith. And then God would work with him, more promises, finally, the covenant. The covenant that he makes is not limited to Abraham, but Abraham's seed. And then Abraham's seed is multiplied and greatly multiplied, and it covers the whole earth. His promises, whatever promises and covenant God makes with Abraham, it touches the whole world. All families of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed. So it's a multi layered covenant that he makes with Abraham. And let's pick up the story. And it's a duality. Let me see what's written in the. Okay, now you're seeing. Okay, let's move into the presentation. Here, he not only changes names of Abram and Sarah, he also changes his own name. Isn't it fascinating? We see God coming himself with three different names in this interaction. Initially, he interacts with Abraham as Yahweh or Yahweh, and then later on, he appears himself and calls himself as Elohim. And third is El Shaddai, which is usually translated God Almighty, Almighty. Now, Abraham has no children. He's Sarah is barren, and God comes and makes all these promises. I will multiply you. I will bless you. I'll make great. I will bless your seed. But here he's 70, 75, 80, 90, and 99. There is no clue of having a son from Sarah. Hmm. But God makes all these promises, and finally, he makes a promise that I will give you a seed from womb of Sarah, from your own loins, from your own bowels, and with this seed, I will do wonders and miracles. And you have been faithful in such a great historic sense. Nobody before you, nobody after you have demonstrated such faith, with exception to Christ. That's why I will also call you Father of Faithful. So Abraham is like a climax of story of faith. That's why all the people who believe God actually, are called sons of Abraham or children of Abraham, because Abraham's faith, we also have same faith in God. As he demonstrated his faith in God, we hope to demonstrate similar way. So that's how we become children of Abraham. So we have Abraham's children in a spiritual sense and Abraham's children in flesh sense. So there's a duality of flesh and spirit. We see that in these passages. I think we have spent enough time on introduction. Let's go. Plan for today, the etymology, and then key phrases. Key phrases are so important. These key phrases are so generic. God uses them both physically as well as spiritually, in the realm of flesh as well as realm of spirit. So we have to get familiar and understand the key phrases in this story. And then main presentation, Abrahamic Covenant. We will go through 4 chapters, Genesis 12, 15, 17, and 22. There's one short passage we will also visit. And etymology, we have went through this. Berith is Hebrew word, and diatheke is Greek. So I'm not going to spend much time on this. The key phrases are important. The key phrases, first is promised seed. This is so important, so foundational. And this Abrahamic covenant is a bedrock foundation stone for the new covenant. It's very difficult to understand the new covenant if you don't get this background of the promised seed. Promised seed. And second is promised land and inheritance. These are super important words. The inheritance, you are going to inherit something which is promised land because of the promised seed. In promised seed, the promised land and its inheritance comes. And then finally, all the families of earth are blessed. All the families of the earth are blessed in you, Abraham, in your seed, Abraham. So here, there's a local scope and a global scope. There's a local scope is promised seed and promised land, and all the families of earth are intended to be blessed in the local scope, and there is a global scope touching everybody on the earth. That's the scope. I want to introduce two paradigms today. As we walk through the scriptures, we'll also see this paradigm. One is Elohimic paradigm. Second is Yahwehic paradigm. Yahweh, the word Yahweh, God's title, is used in a personal sense. I'm personally relating myself to you. It is a covenantal relationship-based title of God. When he says, I am the Yahweh, I am making covenant with you. This is a personal covenantal paradigm. This paradigm is applied only to a particular group of people who enjoy the covenantal relationship with God. That's why Yahweh is used in a very exclusive way. The second paradigm is Elohim. Elohimic paradigm is global. Whenever he addresses himself, I am Elohim, your God, what it means is, even though I'm talking to you, Abraham, I have in mind all people, the whole earth, the whole mankind I'm thinking of. That is Elohimic paradigm. So we have to understand both the paradigms, and we would see this Hebrew language brings this clarity, beautiful clarity, which paradigm God is addressing these covenants. So just keep in mind, Yahweh is much local in scope, revolves around covenanted people, while Elohimic paradigm covers the whole mankind, past, present, and future. So we went through last time the Passover, where he relates Passover with the new covenant. We don't need to go through there, and we will begin our discussion with Genesis 11. Genesis 11, to get the background. Genesis 11, verse 27. This is where the Abrahamic covenant story begins. The actual covenant we would see a couple of chapters afterwards, few slides afterwards, as God would look at each of the covenant in its totality of the story. That's why I want to pick up the story here. The story starts with a man called Terah. Terah is a descendant of Noah. Noah, Shem, and bunch of guys. And then we have Terah, and Terah's son is Abraham. I think most of you are familiar with the story. I don't want to repeat the basics, but nevertheless, we would walk through the scriptures because scriptures have that life in them. They bring us new things, good things, beautiful things. So let's start with Genesis 11, verse 27. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. There are three sons he has, Terah. And Haran, his son, begot Lot. And Haran, this son, Haran of Terah, he died early before his father Terah. Now Terah is alive and Haran is dead in the land of his nativity, which is Ur of Chaldees. It's a Chaldea. The story starts with this location, Babylon. Now, Terah, Abraham, Nahor, Haran, Lot, all of them now are in Babylon. This is a great script, great picture of God asking Abraham to come out of Babylon, my people, and go to Canaan. Canaan is where Jerusalem would be there and the Zion would be there. Those of you who are coming to the Prophecy Insight series, you would understand this script very well. Come out of her, my people, be separate, and stay with Zion, my mountain, my people, and my city. That's the script. And Abram and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and name of Nahor's wife is Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, and father of Milcah, and father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren. She had no child. We have many barren women waited for son, and finally God providentially visits them and blesses them with a male child, son. That's a recurring story. So here is Sarah, who was barren and no child. And Terah took Abram, his son, Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son's Abraham's wife, and they went forth from Ur of Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan, and they came unto Haran. Unfortunately, the King James uses Haran. It's a place, name of a place, Haran, and dwelt there. So this is a high-level statement. All the people moved from Babylon and came to Canaan. Now we see the background, and the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran, the place. Now, why I am giving this slide is you understand the genealogy. The genealogy is important. Terah is the guy, and Terah has three sons, Haran, Nahor, Abraham, or Abram, and he has Sarai, with another wife. So they have multiple wives. I think they're like Mormons. They have more wives. And Sarah is his daughter by another wife, but these three share the same mother. Sarah has a different mother, but same father as these guys. That's why she is half sister to him and also his wife. And Haran gives birth to his son is Lot, daughter is Milcah, and Isaiah. And Nahor begets Bethuel, and Abraham gets Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac, of course, you have from Sarah, and Ishmael has a different mother, that is Hagar. You know the story, that's why I'm putting not putting them. And Bethuel gets Laban and Rebekah. And Isaac marries Rebekah. And, uh, and Laban begets Leah and Rachel, two daughters. And Isaac begets Jacob. And Jacob's name is turned into Israel. And then he begets the 12 sons who became 12 tribes of Israel, because his name is changed to Israel. These are called children of Israel, and they are progenitors of 12 tribes of Israel. And then Lot has two sons, Moab and Ammon, with incest relationship. So there are two kingdoms, two people. This is the broad thing, and Abraham has son through Hagar, but that is not the legal heir. The legal heir or the promised seed is Isaac. Now, several chapters, Isaac is not in picture. They have no idea that they will have Isaac, while God promises, promise after promise, that he will do so many wonders to Abraham, rewarding his faith. His faith, so look at the story of Abraham, the faith that is so pleasing to God. Each of us and every one of us have a similar opportunity to demonstrate and grow and mature and again redemonstrate our faith in God, no matter what. That is the lesson I want all of us to focus. The story of faith. You can say the whole story of Abraham is a story of faith. Now come to Genesis 12, verse 1, where we see the promises. Just like the woman and man in that earlier picture, they begin their journey and relationship with promises of more commitment. Now the Lord, look at Yahweh, has said unto Abram, get you out of your country and from your kindred, from your father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. This is a journey from Babylon to Zion. And I will make you of a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. So here God proactively coming and telling Abraham that I will make you a great nation, I will bless you, I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. How you shall be a blessing, Abraham? I will bless them that bless you and curse them that curses you. And another way I will bless you, Abraham, is in you shall all families of earth be blessed. It has a global scope and a local scope. In you, Abraham, I'm saying so many promises to you because I'm going to build a relationship with you. Eventually, I'm going to make a covenant with you. And that covenant has far reaching consequences. But Abraham has no son. Abraham's faith is tested. So Abram departed as the Lord Yahweh had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten, that is, the servants or slaves that they have gotten, they are time to pack and move. And they gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So here the journey from Babylon to Canaan or Zion is completed. This journey is a great journey of faith. You are obeying the voice of God, and you are forsaking all the familiarity of your home, your friends, your relatives, and the comfort zone, You're walking all the way, long, treacherous journey, packing everything, packing all that you can at reach Zion, the Canaan. Because Canaan is the land that he is going to give to Abraham's seed. That's a promise. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, into the place of Moreh, plain of Moreh, or say Mount Moreh. And the Canaanite was then in the land. So Canaanites were there, the Canaanites. Canaanites are a picture as a shadow of unconverted people. Canaanites are a picture of also people who are aligned with the devil, who are under the sway of Satan. There's a figure of speech of Canaanites. That's why God says, there will not be a Canaanite in my kingdom. Not that the physical Canaanites would not make it into kingdom. Pretty sure several of them would make it into kingdom of God. But the typology, the word Canaanite means more than a geographical description of some physical description of some physical people. It's much more than that. There's a typology there in play. And the Lord Yahweh appeared unto Abram and said, unto your seed. Now, the seed, God is saying a seed will come out of you. Perhaps God is promising that I will give you a seed. That's where we get the concept of promised seed. This is so important. Promised seed. Will I give this land? I'm not only promising a seed for you, that is promised seed, but to that promised seed, I will give this land where you have set your foot, the whole Canaan, which belongs to Canaanites in a typological way. I will give it to you, Zion, who appeared unto him. And there Abram built an altar unto the Lord Yahweh, who appeared unto him. So God appeared and he built an altar in response. See the reverence that Abram had for God, and his awesome reverence and and faith and obedience towards Yahweh. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. And there he built an altar unto the Lord Yahweh, and called upon the name of the Lord Yahweh. So he moved again, but within the region of Canaan. So far, chapter 12, we learned few things. Promises from Yahweh to Abram, Genesis 12. I will make you of a great nation. I will bless you. I will make you your name great. And you shall be a blessing in two ways. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And in you, this is the second blessing, all the families of earth be blessed. Let's go to Genesis 14. This is an interlude because Melchizedek visits Abraham. Just I want to walk you through, because this Melchizedek is used when we come to New Covenant. This has enormous ramifications. And this is when Lot was kidnapped by other kings, and Abraham, with his armed servants, go after them and rescues Lot and other kings. And then he delivers Lot from them and brings him home, and Lot's wife and his family also. And then something happens. It is not you, Abraham, out of your military power or your smartness that you won, but it is me that made you win and rescue Lot. Isn't it? The scripts are so early for us. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. The bread and wine. It sounds like New Covenant. And he was the priest of Most High God. This is another title we are seeing. El Elohim. It's a God of gods, kind of you praise. Our Most High God, this is how translators translate it in English. And he is the priest of Most High God. And this priest is Melchizedek. He came, met Abraham with bread and wine. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of Most High God, El Elohim, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, El Elohim, which has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he, Abraham, gave him tithes of all. So this is a typological statement. This is also a real statement. And it is Most High God who actually delivered his enemies into Abraham's hand. So we will use this when we come to New Covenant, but we will jump to chapter 15, Genesis 15, verse 1. So there's a second phase of God interacting with Abraham. God comes and visits Abraham. There is an interaction. God asks him to do a few things, and Abraham responds. And again, please notice faith. Faith is belief and obedience and living every instruction that God gives. That is the faith being demonstrated in a much profound way. And God at some point makes covenant with Abraham. It's not just promises. Let's see the second encounter of God with Abraham. Genesis 15, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord, Yahweh again, came unto Abram in a vision. Here, God is coming to him in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am your shield and your exceeding great reward. Even though you are in a foreign land, land of Canaanites, left your comfort zone of Babylon, you came here. Fear not, I am with you, and I am your exceeding great reward. At this point, Abraham has no clue what that exceeding great reward. And perhaps he knows that he is his shield. God, Yahweh was his shield. And Abraham said, now Abraham is addressing back, perhaps in the vision. Look at the words, Lord Adonai, God, Yahweh. Adonai Yahweh or Lord Yahweh, what will you give me, seeing that I go childless? And the steward of my house is this Eliezer of Damascus. So while you are making all these promises, I don't see anything in practical reality. Here I am getting old. My wife is getting old. We are past the childbearing age. We have stricken old, and you are still coming and making promises. It's kind of fairly disappointing for the long wait, but the scriptures tell us Abraham has not staggered at the promises of God, but he believed God. So, nevertheless, he had that internal conviction, even though there is no physical evidence, but he still believed that God would somehow would wrought his promises to fruition. But nevertheless, he's asking, God, I'm not seeing any hope of this going to happen in the physical realm, in the practical reality, but how shall this? And God replies, and Abraham said, uh, Behold, to me you have given no seed, and lo, one born in my house, my servant, is my heir. All my wealth, all my possessions are going to my servant, not to my son. And behold, the word of the Lord Yahweh came unto him, saying, This shall not be your heir. Eliezer is not going to be your heir, but he that shall come forth out of your own bowels shall be your heir. So he's still hinting at a seed. And he brought him forth abroad and said, now here God is bringing him. There's no physical evidence, but God is just showing them, look now towards heaven and tell the stars if you be able to number them. And he said unto them, so shall your seed be. The seed, the seed. And at this point, there's no physical evidence for Abraham, but he chooses to believe God. Continuing verse 6. And Abraham believed in the Lord Yahweh, and Yahweh counted it to him, Abraham, for righteousness. This is the first occurrence of demonstration of faith in a very small way, just believing what God says. That is the imputed righteousness. And when Abraham offers Isaac, he proves, and that is another form of righteousness or another stage of righteousness. That is justified righteousness. So we're talking about two righteousnesses. One is imputed. This is one. This is what given. This righteousness is imputed. Second, when he offers Isaac, that is justified. We should keep these things in mind. Righteousness has two stages. It starts with imputed righteousness, when you are counted righteous and you are covered with righteousness, but you are not actually righteous until you demonstrate in a much bigger way. This is internal righteousness. You believe in your heart, that is imputed. But when you demonstrate what you believed in your heart externally, external works, then it becomes justified righteousness. So let's continue. Verse 7, and he said unto him, I am the Lord Yahweh that brought you out of Ur of Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it. So we come out of Babylon, come to Zion, and Zion would be our inheritance. Now here there are two things God is promising: a promised land and inheritance. This is very important we understand this. There's a land that is promised to Abraham or Abraham's seed, and not only the land is given to him, you are going to inherit it. What is inheritance? A permanent possession. It belongs to you, and it is given by God, not by anybody else. So you have inheritance, you're closely tied up until as long as you live, this land belongs to you, the inheritance. There's a permanence of ownership. And the land is the thing that I'm giving you. The land that you're seeing all around, the land of Canaan. And he said, Lord God, Adonai Yahweh, whereby shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, make me a heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove and a young pigeon. Now he's going to make a sacrifice. This is a big sacrifice. He cuts all these animals in half and puts them apart. And the birds, he would not cut them and put them at the end. And then Yahweh, God, would pass through and makes a covenant with him. And he took him unto all these and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another, but the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Continuing, verse 12, and when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that your seed shall be a stranger in the land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. We understand this as an Egypt. So Abraham's seed, the descendants, plural, would be subjugated to Egypt. They will be in Egypt for 400 years. God is prophesying to Abraham And also that nation whom they shall serve, that is Egypt, will I judge. I will judge Egyptians. There will be 10 plagues I will be sending, and afterwards they shall come out with great substance. So they get lots of jewelry from Egyptians, and Egyptians beg them to leave because they can't take any more of the plagues. So they come out of Egypt with great substance. And you shall go to your fathers in peace. Abraham, all this drama that I am orchestrating, all this story is not limited to you. In fact, it goes beyond you. You would die and be buried with your fathers. But the story continues because this is a great story I'm beginning, and this has huge ramifications and it touches everybody, whole mankind on the face of this earth. So, verse 15, and you shall go to your fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again. So they will come back to Canaan, even though they would be in Egypt because of the severe famine. They have to go to Egypt because Joseph was there, and they would live there, multiply there. And finally, under leadership of Moses, they come out of Egypt and come back to Canaan again. Why I can't give you this land right away? The iniquity of Amorites is not yet full. The Canaanites are sowing the wickedness and unbelief and sin, and their sin have to come to a fruition. This is a cup has to be filled and overflow. For the three sins of Canaanites, when the fourth, when their cup of judgment, cup of sins overflows, then that is the time God brings judgment of Canaanites, when he brings Israelites. So 400 years they have to wait. Verse 17, and it came to pass that when sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. Now the animals are there, it is pitch dark, and there are two beings actually pass through. I strongly believe this is God the Father and Jesus Christ in pre-incarnate form. How do you explain otherwise? Verse 18, in the same day, Lord Yahweh made a covenant with him, Berith. This Berith keeps coming with Abram, saying, here the covenant, until 18, we are seeing only promises. Now the step forward, he makes a covenant with Abram, saying, unto your seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt, that is Nile, to the great river, the river Euphrates. So you have two rivers from Nile to Euphrates. The entire land, I'm giving you an inheritance to your seed, your children. History tells us they never really possessed this much land because of their unbelief, not willing to fight and drive out Canaanites. This is the promise. Just because God promised doesn't mean it is all going to happen, because his seed also have to demonstrate the faith. If they have really truly believed God, they would have fought the fights in faith, because that land belongs to them. Their inheritance they could have possessed, and driving everybody, the Canaanites, Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaims, and Amorites, and Canaanites, and Girgashites, and Jebusites. All these ites, some people would say. So, recap what we learned: promises from again Yahweh to Abraham, and now he includes seed. I am your shield and your exceeding reward. This is still promise. He did not make covenant. I promise a seed would come out of your own bowels. So this is also a promise. Then he makes, your seed shall be like innumerable stars of heaven. That's also a promise. And then he makes a covenant. Unto Abraham's seed, God gave the land between Euphrates and Nile, river of Egypt. So this is part of covenant, a covenantal agreement, binding on God and binding on Abraham. And continuing, jumping to verse 17, chapter 17. So this is the crux of the covenant, Abrahamic covenant. Genesis chapter 17, verse 1. When Abram was 90 years old and 99, he's about to hit century. Still there is no seed, no Isaac. Isn't it strange? God even makes covenant. There is no physical evidence. Faith is substance of things not seen, the evidence of things hoped for. That's what Abraham is demonstrating. And when Abram was 90 years old and 99 years, the Lord Yahweh appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God, El Shaddai, and walk before me and be you perfect. Here is the covenant unfolding itself. Now, why God uses the title El Shaddai? Because he's about to make something which is impossible. When a man is 99 years old and Sarah was 90 years old, it is impossible at that stage to bear children, and God has to reverse all the medical laws and all laws of nature. And he is the Almighty God. He is capable of doing this wonder, this miracle of bringing the promised seed. Because he promised, he is able to bring forth. That is my job. That is my part. Abram, I would bring you seed. I will fulfill all my promises through this covenant. But you have to do your part. See, now we are seeing the covenant in terms of responsibilities. You have to do your part, and I would do my part. This is where we are going. Abraham's part is walk before Yahweh and be you perfect. Perfect doesn't mean sinless. Perfect means complete, mature. And I will make my covenant between me and you and will multiply you exceedingly. So you do your part, walk before me in faith and be perfect. And I am making this covenant. I will multiply you exceedingly. Again, there is no sight of Isaac. Still, this is all drama is unfolding. And Abraham has greater and greater challenge because the years are passing, decades are passing, and he has a greater challenge to believe God and hold on to the faith. And after all, scriptures tell us Abraham did not stagger at the promises of God. Are you and me are staggering at the promises of God? Or are we renewing our faith and waiting for the promises of God patiently and in faith? And Abram fell on his face, and God, Elohim, talked with him, saying, here is the shift. Please observe the shift from Yahwehic model. We are shifting to Elohimic model. From here, Elohim is a different paradigm. Now God is talking about the entire mankind. He wants to reach through the next set of verses to the entire mankind. Elohim is a generic title of God. Yahweh is a very covenantal based title. And El Shaddai is his capabilities. He's Almighty God. He can make things, impossible things to happen, opening the womb of Sarah. As for me, behold, my covenant beareth is with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. So what he promised earlier is now becoming part of the covenant. Berith, you see, Berith is coming. And father of many nations. Many nations actually touches every nation on the face of the earth. In fact, it is past, present, and future of all the nations, all the people, entire mankind, because I am not only Yahweh to Israel, but I am also Elohim to whole mankind, all the creation. This is what God is communicating. Neither shall your name be any more called Abram, that is just exalted father, but your name shall be Abraham, father of multitudes. For a father of many nations have I made you. And I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you nations of you, nations out of you, and kings shall come out of you. This is how God is testing his faith and training his faith. No sight of Isaac, and all these things are going on. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed. Your seed also comes, Abraham's seed, promised seed, after you in their generations for an everlasting covenant, again, Berith, to be a God unto you and to your seed after thee. So whenever he addresses himself as Elohim, he has in mind the whole mankind, past, present, and future. And I will give unto you and your seed after you the land wherein you are a stranger in the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So to your seed, I will be their God. So here I will be a God to you, and you will be my people, is kind of owning each other. It's a sharing of each other. Again, the language of marriage here. And God, Elohim, said unto Abram, you shall keep my covenant, Berith. Therefore, you have to do your part, you and your seed after you in their generations. So God would expand the part or responsibilities of the covenanted people. This is my covenant which you shall keep between me and your seed after you. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. So this is part of your responsibility. You have to circumcise on the 8th day. And you all shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. In the Noahic covenant, rainbow was the sign or the token. Here, the circumcision is the sign or token of Abrahamic covenant. But the circumcision that is commanded here is circumcision in flesh of the foreskin. Remember that only males, women are not included in this operation, but they are covered. They are covered under the covenant, Abrahamic covenant, even though they do not participate in this circumcision of flesh. When we come to new covenant, circumcision of heart, woman would also participate in that circumcision. Men, woman, everybody. Verse 12, he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations. He that is born in your house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of your seed. Even though people are not of your seed, since they are purchased with your money and now they are in your house, they have to be circumcised. The concept goes not just with the person, but the house also. The house of Abraham or household of Abraham is now also included in the covenant, the language. The strangers can come and become part of the household of Abraham. These are things hinted. He that is born in your house and he that is bought with your money must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh. It's a flesh circumcision is an everlasting covenant. So that is part of the covenant. And if you fail to do your part, what are the results? See here, like the terms and conditions of the covenant being laid out by God. The uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people, because he is no longer part of the household of Abraham, and he would no longer be inheriting the land of Canaan. All the good things that come out of covenant would not be applied to a person who fails to circumcise. And he has broken my covenant. This is breaking of covenant. See how clear God is. And God Elohim said unto Abraham, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, that is princess, but Sarah, the noble woman, an elevated woman shall her name be. There's an elevation of titles. A new name would be given. That's what God promised in Revelation. A new name would be given to each and every one of us. This is what we are already seeing. New names given to the people. A meaningful name. And I will bless her and give you a son also for heir. This is the promised seed. Yeah, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. So Sarah is also blessed in this Abrahamic covenant. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed. Many commentators discussed about laughing. This is not laughing of unbelief. This is laughing of belief, but it is a laugh based on joy. Even though he's 99 years, he was pretty sure God is going to bring this, unfold this, and bring him a seed. So a laughter can be caused by joy and belief, or the laughter can be caused by unbelief, as the case with Sarah would be. And said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, that is 90 years old, bear? Yes, this is Almighty God, El Shaddai, is going to bring this to happen. And Abraham said unto God, Elohim, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. Still he is confused. Perhaps God is talking about Ishmael. So, oh, let Ishmael be also before you. So you would bless Ishmael and make him the heir of all these things. All the nations of earth perhaps be blessed in Ishmael. That is one thought. The second explanation is he also wants Ishmael to be blessed along with another promised seed. Both seems relevant, but he brings Ishmael and God hears his prayer. And God Elohim said, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac. The name Isaac comes from God. This is the part of the story. The Elohim God is bringing and giving this name even before the child is born. Isaac. Isaac has two different layers. One is physical seed, Isaac, and the second layer points to Christ. And I will establish my covenant berith with him, Isaac, for an everlasting covenant berith, and with his seed after him. Isaac and his seed also would be part of this covenant. Okay, that's good. That's so far good. But there is a small trick here we miss, most of us, when we read this. When we read this, we think Ishmael would not inherit these blessings because the blessing, the covenant is going with Isaac. Is that true? As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and I will make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant berith will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto you at this set time in next year. It appears on the surface that Isaac and his children will not be beneficiaries of this covenant. It is not true, really. In physical Isaac, that's possible. Only the children that come out of Isaac would benefit the physical blessings that come out of this covenant. But Isaac is just a shadow. The true Isaac is Christ. When it comes to Christ, it touches everybody, all mankind, including Ishmael and his children. That's the reason we see not only Abraham gets circumcised, he even circumcises Ishmael, his son. This is beautiful. And he left off talking with him, that God, Elohim, went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael, his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the self same day, same day. He doesn't delay when his part comes. Look at look at the enthusiasm of Abraham in spite of no physical evidence. Look at the fervent spirit. Look at the proactive spirit and nature of Abraham. He doesn't wait. He doesn't want to postpone things. In the self same day, he is circumcised. He does his part as God has said unto him. In the aggressiveness of Abraham, based on his faith in promises and covenant of his God Yahweh as well as Elohim. We can see that. And Abraham was 99 years old, and when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskins, no sign of Isaac yet. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskins. In the self same day was Abraham circumcised, and Ishmael, his son, because Ishmael is going to be this part of this covenant in spiritual sense, not in physical sense. Isn't it interesting? And all the men of his house, born in the house and brought money of the stranger, were circumcised with him. The household becomes important, the household of Christ. Later on, we will see. Recap what happened so far. Chapter 17 of Genesis. God makes a covenant between Yahweh and Abraham. Walk before me and be you perfect and mature. Keep growing. I will multiply you exceedingly. But covenant also is made by Elohim. Just find a distinction. Elohim is a global context. It is the whole mankind, past, present, and future, and Abraham and his seed. You shall be father of many nations. Abraham to Abraham, I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you. A sign and token, every male child, 8 days old, to be circumcised, foreskin of flesh removed, born in the house, bought with money. They also, uncircumcised, will be cut off and has broken the covenant. Sarah becomes Sarah. Sarai becomes Sarah, and I will bless Sarah and make mother of nations. Kings of people will be of her, and promised seed Isaac. I will establish my covenant with Isaac. This is all the covenant, Abrahamic covenant. And we will shortly visit Genesis 22. This is the demonstration of faith. When you believe, that is the beginning of your faith. And when you actually prove your faith, then it becomes complete. This is the sacrifice of Isaac. And it came to pass after these things, this is Genesis 22, verse 1. And God, Elohim, here again, Elohim, what Abraham is going to do is a global consequence for the entire mankind. How? Because he offers his only begotten son, Isaac, which paves the way for God the Father to offer his only begotten son, Yeshua Jesus Christ, for the whole mankind, past, present, and future. It came to pass after these things that God Elohim did test, should not be tempt, Abraham. This is Natha, Hebrew word, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, behold, here I am. See the active response of Abraham to God. And he said, take now your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love. See the language. It gets more difficult for Abraham with this kind of language. I know you love your son. I know this is only begotten son. I know you waited long and long and long enough. And finally, I give you this promised seed. Now I am asking you to sacrifice that promised seed and get you into the land of Moriah and offer your son Isaac, and therefore burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you of. What a big test of faith of Abraham. Hmm. Abraham's initial passing of tests is not all the story. The story has to come here, and we must read these scriptures. How his faith was matured, how his faith was tested as well as trained, and a big milestone of his faith was reached. It is the finishing of his faith, conclusion of his faith, which began when he believed God. When God shows him stars of heaven, I'll make your seed like innumerable, uncountable stars of heaven. He believed. That is where he began. Now it comes to its completion, mature. So it's a both burnt offering. So he has to kill Isaac with a knife, and then he has to burn the whole body of Isaac after slaying him or slitting his throat, as you would do an animal burnt offering. This is whole burnt offering. You give everything you have. You have everything is Isaac, your hope, your future, and your inheritance. Everything is surrounded with Isaac, and now you are giving all that you have to God. This is how God the Father gave his only begotten Son for you and me. This is much profound. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him and Isaac his son, clave wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went into the place which God, Elohim, please note Elohim, had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off, and he has to journey 3 days. 3 days. Third day he will offer. Isn't it similar to New Testament sacrifice of Christ? And Abraham said unto his young men, abide you all here with us, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship and come again to you. See the faith of Abraham. He pretty much sure that we would come back. You wait here, guys. How would he know unless he has a living faith? The living faith in his Elohim as well as in his Yahweh, as well as his El Shaddai. Verse 6, Genesis 22. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon his son Isaac. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spoke unto Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. And he said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Father, Abraham said, my son, God, Elohim, will provide himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which Elohim, God, had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there and laid wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Abraham staggered not at the promises of God. He was willing to give all that he has, his priceless possession, his priceless gift from God, his most awaited thing in his whole world and whole life. Isaac is able to offer him as whole burnt offering to God. Look at the supreme demonstration of faith of Abraham. That's why he becomes father of faithful. And that's why the covenant with him is such a huge, big covenant. It touches every human being ever born. And the angel Malach of the Lord Yahweh called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, here I am. The word twice speak is such a profound thing. Here, sometimes it's negative, sometimes it's positive. It's a positive twice speaking. Abraham, Abraham, stop what you are doing. because this is a great calling from God, pronouncing greatest blessing on any man, any human being that's going to occur, happen shortly now as a response. And he said, lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that you fear God, Elohim, seeing you have not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Such is the love he has to God. And, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. Instead of Isaac, a substitute was provided by God. This is a substitute, propitiatory shelter. Christ later on becomes a substitutory sacrifice. This is where the foundation for new covenant is laid in this great story of faith. Verse 14, and Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, or Yahweh sees. He sees. He sees. He saw my faith, and he also provided a substitute. And it is said this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Seen. God sees. God sees your faith, however small it is, however profound it is. Nevertheless, God sees and appreciates your faith. After all, it is impossible to please God without faith. And the angel Malach of the Lord Yahweh called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time. The first time is stop. Second time he comes again and said, by myself I have sworn, said the Lord. Sometimes people call it as maledictory oath. God swears by himself because there is no other higher person than God. So he swears by himself. It's an oath. It's a double oath that the Lord Yahweh, for because you have done this thing, I have not withheld your son, your only son, Yachid. I'm going to pronounce this, that in blessing I will bless you, and in multiplying I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, as the sand which is upon the seashore, and your seed shall possess the gates of his enemies. And in your seed, promised seed, shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. So far, we learned promises of God, and in blessing I will bless you, and multiplying I will multiply you. Your seed be as stars of heaven, sand of seashore. Your seed shall possess the gate of his enemies, and in your seed, all the families of earth be blessed. That is, so just to recap, the big thing, Noahic covenant is an initial covenant. Then we have studied Abrahamic covenant. Abrahamic covenant is a bedrock foundation for two most important covenants would be based on. The two important, very important two covenants would stem out of Abrahamic covenant. First is Sinai covenant. All these covenants that God promised Abraham, you see the fulfillment in seed, promised seed, Isaac, Sinai covenant. It's all flesh and all physical. The blessings revolve around physical and based on flesh and no spirit. And the second covenant, that is new covenant, the promised seed is Jesus Christ, Yeshua. It is 100% spirit, no flesh, no physical. Physical and flesh are deprioritized, demoted. In fact, if you lean on flesh or physical, you are not part of this covenant. That is the strict separation. But these two covenants find their foundation on Abrahamic covenant. Abrahamic covenant is a great prelude for both the covenants, but you are talking about two layers. One is flesh and other is spirit. Two promised seed, and we see promised seed is from Abraham's loins. And here the promised seed not only comes from Abraham's loins, but is actually from God the Father. It is Father's only begotten Son. We see promised seed is flesh Sarah's son. Here, Jesus Christ is also a flesh son of Sarah, but he's also spiritual Sarah, that is New Jerusalem, is mother of us all. He is also promised seed. And then great nation, I will make you a great nation. He made flesh Israel at its prime under King David and under Solomon also. They became greatest nation on the face of the earth. Flesh circumcised, that is flesh Israel. And you have spirit Israel, also a great nation, true church, but they're circumcised in heart and spirit. That is new covenant. I want to give you the roadmap of what we are going to discuss. And promised land here, the physical land Canaan that flows with milk and honey. Here, the promised land is different. It is spiritual promised land, that is New Jerusalem. And this is what we inherit under new covenant. Under the Sinai covenant, the physical children of Isaac, Abraham, and Jacob, they would permanently inherit the physical Canaan between the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. That's where the things, I want to skip these things for. Finally, this is what we learned this. Yahweh and Elohim, both titles, God and Abraham and his seed. In blessing, I will bless you, and multiplying, I will multiply you. I will make you a great nation. Your seed be as stars of heaven and sand of the seashore. Your seed shall possess and inherit the promised land. So, with that, in your seed, all the families of earth be blessed. These are the key phrases and key points, and we covered a lot. I would expect that you would watch the presentation once again. Now I am going to hand over the control back to Don Wales. Thank you for your attention and listening to the message.
I have to unmute. All right, now that I'm unmuted, oops. This is where we ask questions of the presentation, make comments about the presentation. I don't see anybody new, so everybody knows pretty much what to do, how to do it. Crystal's iPad.
So it's interesting to me that Hagar could not fulfill the promise. And we see that in the book of Galatians. We're the of the promised seed, not the physical seed. So that's Paul's big argument with the faction of the circumcised is you guys are all thinking about flesh and blood. I'm talking about something that's a whole lot bigger, a whole lot more bigger.
Do you want me to share screen and
Yeah,
go to
please.
Galatians 4?
Please.
Okay.
Because if you only select those that are physically Jewish, physically from Israel, leave out the majority of humanity. Paul made an argument that he said the seed was singular, it was not plural. The promise that Abraham sought was the Messiah, not Isaac.
Somebody volunteers to read from 22 to 31.
I can do it. Just tell me when to stop.
22 to 31, all of it.
For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise. Which things are an allegory? For these are the two covenants, the one from Mount Sinai, which gendereth bondage, which is Hagar. For this Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is, and is in bondage at this time with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. For it is written, Rejoice, thou barren that bearest not. Break forth and cry, thou that travailest not. For the desolate hath many more children than she which hath an husband. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. But as then, he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the Spirit. Even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith the Scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be an inheritor with the son of the free woman. So then, brethren, we are not children of the bondwoman, but of the free.
Thank you very much, Alan. My throat was dried up. Thank you for stepping in.
Sure.
Phil, you want to discuss this or?
Yes. So if we place our faith in the keeping of the law, I'm not saying you don't keep the law. You do keep the law. Emphatically, you must keep the law. But if that's your faith, then you're in bondage. We at least I perceive that we're called to a bigger calling, and that is to find out how to apply all the law and mercy and justice, not just by the letter of it. And it's very interesting that we are supposed to be the children of the promise, and that rolls back to the times. Who did he promise to? Why isn't it the covenant made unto Sarah? Why isn't it the covenant made unto Sarah? She had to believe too. Her name got changed. And that goes right back to what God has joined together, let no man separate. He joined Sarah and Abraham, not Sarah, Hagar, and Abraham. So God had brought Sarah to Abraham for a lifelong mate. They went to chase after the flesh to try to fulfill a promise they'd already made and got short. So I see many promises made to women, and the plan of God cannot occur without them. If Sarah would have said, no, I'm done, I ain't doing that. You can't make me have a baby at 100. This would all been null and void, but she didn't do that. So there's a great lot of lessons to be learned here. And also, if you study Abraham's life, there's many times when he was not faithful to his wife. It's in Genesis 18, he was not faithful to her. When his back was up against the wall, he told the king, oh, she's my sister. And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, this is in Genesis 20. In a dream by the night, said to him, behold, you are a dead man, because this woman you have taken is this man's wife. And Abimelech had not come near her. And he said to the Lord, you will not slay a righteous nation also, will you? Did you not say to me, she is my sister? And even she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart, I'm innocent. And God said into him, dream, yes, I know that you did this in integrity of your heart. That's why I'm withholding the sin from you. Therefore, I did not touch her. Abraham and Sarah both, when a push came to shove, didn't make the grade. But it still was a promise. Just because we don't make the grade and fall down once doesn't mean we don't get up and go again. And in the end, they both fulfilled the promise. They kept true to themselves. So this gives me hope. In Genesis 20, that Abraham had his wrinkles and his flaws, and so did Sarah, but they became the mother and the father of the faithful. Thank you.
Go ahead, Alan.
Can you pull up Galatians 3 for me, please?
So Galatians 3.
Yeah. I'm
Which
only going
verse?
to look at 14 and 16. This has to do with in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed through Jesus Christ. And here we read in verse 14 that the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Jesus Christ, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith. In verse 16, and to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. He said, not unto many seeds, but as to one, and to thy seed, which is Christ. So those are pretty important in the understanding of the long range, the long reaching arm of prophecy from the time Abraham was promised that all the nations shall be blessed. Here we see part of that explained through Christ is which is the cause of all the blessing. So I'll just leave it there for now. I know there's other hands up, so I got some other things that I'll add later. Thanks.
Robin?
So, what is the significance of God telling Abraham, Isaac, your son, your only son, when clearly he had Ishmael also?
Yeah, I can answer that. If anybody else wants to answer that, I want them to go first, and eventually I will come back, Robin. Sorry.
I've got a comment on it. That's because the promise is made to Sarah. It was promised directly to Sarah. It wasn't promised to any other woman. The promise had to come through her seed. That's how that was done. If she didn't matter, she was just a footnote, then you could say, well, okay, let's do the firstborn. No, it had to be the firstborn of the promise. And that's Sarah.
Well, when he originally made the promise, he was speaking to Abraham, and clearly he was married to Sarah, so one would assume. But God never directed that promise to Sarah until afterward, when he said, no, I'm not going to just bless Ishmael. I will give you a son through Sarah. Like that was a promise made to Sarah, made regarding Sarah after Ishmael was already born. When Yahweh
came to visit Abraham in the desert, and they broke bread together, And Sarah was there, and she laughed. And he made her a direct promise to her face alone, to her. It wasn't in front of Abraham. She's not a footnote. That's how I take it. Thank you.
That answer your question, Robin?
I mean, I get that, but I guess there's a I'm looking for, like, words mean something, and I have a hard time when it says, you know, in this case, he uses the word only when it's not an only son. It's the only one through Sarah, but it's not his only son. And I guess the reason that I find it a little difficult is because that's the same terminology used of Jesus, the only begotten son. Well, was there another one before him that didn't receive the promise? Like, is there a parallel there? It just seems a little odd to me that he would use the same terminology. But in Abraham's case, there actually was another son. It just wasn't the one that God chose.
Yeah, there's a will of flesh and will of God or promise of God. That is the fundamental distinction. In a way, Ishmael is illegitimate son, not from wife. Even that, I think, probably not the objection. Objection is they want to fulfill God's promises by their own thinking, by their own thoughts. Will of flesh is the product is Ishmael. That is the main objection. Instead of waiting is faith. Promises of God, the promised seed is the official one God has in mind all through. But he withheld sending Isaac for so long, and they're getting older and older and older. So their faith is tested and trained and strengthened. And then he gives Isaac, your only begotten son, in that context. You might say, why not Ishmael, his begotten son? He was also begotten, but not through Sarah. Again, you go back to covenant. The marriage is between Abraham and Sarah. That's a covenant, is based on that covenant. It's a play of words and multiple layers, the way God writes. I know your answer appears to be simple, but the answer, unfortunately, cannot meet with simple words. It takes longer time, Robin, to explain all the typology and the layers and why God has to write things that way. I don't know, but apparently it seems that he's writing in a multi-layered way. That's my probably unsatisfactory explanation. I'm done.
No, it's not unsatisfactory to say that there's extra layers, and that's actually probably the only way to get a satisfactory answer for it. I tend to be such a black and white thinker. Like I have a very difficult time teasing through some things that are nuanced when it seems like that nuanced meaning is actually a contradiction. Like my brain just starts to fry when I get to that point, because I can't tease it out. I can't make it make sense in my head. And so I kind of hit a wall of frustration.
Yeah, I think that's partly due to English language limitation. If you go to Greek, it is a lot more clear, a lot more clarity. The words that are used are a particular Greek word, very strange Greek word, is called semeion. Semeion is used to most of these things. in Greek New Testament, Simeon is a language of representations and symbols, types, shadows. So when he talks about Abraham, he's also talking about God the Father. When he talks about Isaac, he's also talking about Son of God. When he talks about Jacob, whose name is turned into Israel, he's talking about the whole house of Israel. And then he plays another layer. The physical Israel, flesh Israel, is a type and shadow of another Israel, the spiritual Israel. So you have multiple representations, multiple layers, but the same words, unfortunately, are used and reused. The words remain same, but the concepts revolve in multiple layers. That's where the Simeon really what it means. And Greek thunders with Simeon, and you lose it all in English. That could be part of the problem, and that's where we have to learn to live with what Word of God is given to us, I believe. I'm done.
Again, that's the reason I said it was a promise made unto Sarah. It was a covenant made unto Sarah. If she didn't matter, Ishmael would have worked. But it was a promise made to the couple. It wasn't made to an individual. That's what's being shared here. When the two become one, let them not be separated. They are man and wife in a godly relationship is exactly talking to an individual. If you promise something to a one, you have promised to the other one. And that promise was not made to Hagar. It was made to Sarah. It's a big deal. She is the mother of the righteous, as it said in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation says. And it's a big deal. And that's the reason Paul was getting in trouble with a lot of the Jews. They had God in a box. They owned him. And the rest of all the society couldn't have any unless they bought it from the Jews. Well, that's not the way it works. It's through the words of Christ you enter the covenant. It's not any other way. It's not by cutting the foreskins of your organ off. Thank you.
I think Tom mentioned a verse for Robin. Just I want to go there. Which verse, Tom, do you want to go? Genesis 18, verse 10.
Yeah,
What's in
verse 10, verse 10 does answer it. I actually missed that as a direct promise regarding Sarah.
Okay.
So that was I think, the most direct one that I could find.
Okay.
Okay, you guys move on. Thank you.
But I just want to say one thing. Women are not second class of the promises of God. The promise made to Mary was to directly a woman. No man was involved. And that was the promise that the Messiah could enter this planet. And she said, okay, let it be done. She didn't ask her dad. She didn't ask her brother. She didn't ask her fiance. It was a direct promise made to a woman. It's a big deal.
Don?
Okay, I just wanted to point out something. Actually, the presentation was very good, and I don't want to try to take anything away from the presentation. I just want to add something that I think is astonishing in itself. If you think about all of the scriptures that we've been reading, they are all tied to a time element. Abraham was 75, right? He was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Isaac would be under duress for 400 years. These statements of time are in your Bible. and they have to be accurate, and they are actually proven accurate. I'll just to give you a little understanding of this. The 40th verse of Exodus 12 says, 430 years to the day, not 430 years to the year or the month, but to the day. Something happened 430 years prior to the exact same day. And that day was the day that Israel was leaving Egypt. Someone else was leaving someplace else on that exact same day, 430 years earlier. And that was Abraham. And so, and you can put the whole thing together, because he was 75 years old when he left. Isaac was born at 100. He was weaned at age 5. And that's when the duress really started, because his half brother, who was at that point in time 19, I believe, was making sexual remarks about him. And that's why Sarah said, they got to go. We can't have this competition with the son of promise. And so it was from that point on that Isaac was under duress. And you can see this all the way through his life. He was under duress, and basically the nation was under that duress. So you can put it together, and it's exact to the day, and it just shows that God does things on time, not just guesswork, but actually right on time, and he backs it up with scripture. And that in effect is another proof of the Bible, that it is absolutely accurate.